The timing plus the funding plus the lenders, all of it, it kind of just made the most sense to go all in. And I aged a decade that week, but it worked out. The referral source is not just hearing about Alleviate Care for the first time from Alan, the liaison. They've been bombarded with really useful, well-done content and direct marketing, etc. And now this person comes in and they say, "Oh, I've seen Alleviate Care online. Yeah, there was a great blog post that you guys put up, or that marketing campaign you guys did about stamping out hospice fraud in Southern California. That was really cool."
1, 2, 3, 4.
You're listening to Owner RX with Alan Pentz, the podcast for business owners who want to scale without sacrifice. Each episode delivers battle-tested strategies from the Owner RX Playbook Library, showing you exactly how to build systems that run without you. Here's your host, Alan Pentz.
So today we have a very special guest with a well-spelled name, Alan Kaplan, who is the co-founder and chief medical officer for Alleviate.care, a hospice care company. So Alan, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, so Alan is a neighborhood friend. So it's kind of cool when you can combine, just a few blocks away. We can't even get together for the podcast, even though we only live like 5 blocks from each other. But, that's the modern world. So Alan, tell us a little bit about Alleviate.care.
Yeah. The idea was conceived out of what one would call now entrepreneurship through acquisition. But at the time, my current business partners, who were business school classmates of mine, we didn't really know what that was, didn't use that terminology, but effectively it was a self-funded search. We started out simply that we wanted to acquire a business in lower middle market space. That's where it started. It whittled down to healthcare services, whittled further down to what we would call community-based healthcare services. So things like hospice, home health, home care, things that basically happen in the community or in your home. And we landed on hospice for a variety of reasons. And so in June of 2022, we smartly or stupidly, it's unclear, acquired 3 hospice businesses inside of 10 days, all in Southern California. Despite living on the East Coast now, at the time when this was a kernel of an idea, we were all finish up business school at UCLA, and my 2 partners are based in SoCal, and that's my original home. So now we just crossed our 3-year mark, and Alleviate Care is a functioning, operating, I think well-formed platform. And we're starting to look at our next acquisition and moving into that growth mode.
So you kind of have a special twist on this as a physician, right? So give that sort of background as well.
Yeah. So by training, I'm actually a urologist, a urologic surgeon, and I ended up as an administrator, a hospital administrator, and physician at a community hospital in Los Angeles. After my training, that was kind of during the time I was doing this executive MBA nights and weekends. And one of the areas that got put on my plate was figuring out how the hospital was going to interface with local community-based organizations like skilled nursing facilities and home health agencies and things like that. And that was really my first exposure to hospice care. And I just fell in love from a business standpoint, more so than a healthcare standpoint. And that was, hospice is the most comprehensive set of services under one umbrella in all of healthcare. So we do the clinical work, we have nurses, doctors, social workers, We have spiritual care providers, but we also provide DME, so medical equipment like hospital beds and oxygen tanks, and medications and medical supplies. And all these things are basically fit under one umbrella, and they're done in the patient's home. And so it was really a melding of all these different trends that I was seeing in healthcare. More and more care shifted into the home, more and more sort of what we'll call risk-based contracting or value-based care, and aging population that's getting sicker, and a desire for people to want to have a good healthcare experience in the way they experience other services. So,
Yeah, so I think, I've seen a lot of searchers kind of look at medical related practices, right? But having
yeah,
sort of an MBA person who is a doctor probably helps on the acquisition. You're not paying out like another big salary to kind of keep licenses and things like that. Is that part of the thesis there?
that's a big component. And I think I'm not sure that I gave myself credit for this in the beginning, but it took me a little bit of time to really understand that there are some fields that a searcher might go into where deep experience and deep knowledge about the subject matter matters less. But in things like healthcare services especially, if you're in technology businesses where you're selling into certain domains in healthcare, there's a real value add. It just helps you jump the line, and it gives you credibility to be able to have that experience. And it's not as much about the title as it is about being able to talk the talk.
Right, right. And then as far as like who's paying for these services, is this like Medicare, Medicaid, private insurance? Like
Yeah.
how is that mix?
So it's predominantly Medicare. In our business, about 80% Medicare. It's about 15% Medicaid. In California, it's called Medi-Cal. And then the rest is commercial. What's interesting about the hospice and home health as well is that Medicare really sets the gold standard. And so in any other, physician practice, they're like, Medicare is not a good payer. They aren't great. We prefer commercial. But in hospice, it's actually the opposite. So Medicare, pays at 21 days. I mean, they've got a great RCM, and they are the gold standard payer. And then Medicaid and commercial generally follow suit pretty closely. And
So
that's been
then
true historically.
so how do you deal with the risk? I mean, Medicare is one big payer and they can snap their fingers and change stuff. Is that just a risk you have to take? Or
Welcome to my high blood pressure. Yeah. So it's no doubt a risk. We've done a few things to try to mitigate it in the short run, and that's develop relationships at the federal level. We have worked with, in our network, people that serve as lobbyists, and we've worked with, that's where being in DC helps.
Mhm.
But globally and more long term, there is a risk diversification aspect to this that we've spent a lot of time thinking about, and we've dipped our toe into the water of kind of going that direct to consumer route. But it's sticky, right? Because like even the wealthiest clients can get the same services today for free, effectively for free through their Medicare benefit, provided they're over 65. And so it's a tougher value proposition. So it's something that we're thinking a lot about.
Right, right. So, and then obviously you guys, you kind of made some glancing remark at this, but buying three at once is obviously one business is hard enough. Three, it's like wives, right? I mean, I don't know how the Mormons do it, but sorry, that's I shouldn't say that.
Yeah,
The
we went,
1800s, I don't know how they did it, but
there you go. We went straight
how
Old Testament on that one.
I think we
Um,
might just need to cut that part out. So how did you, taking on three businesses at once? How did that come about? And then how would you assess that as a strategy?
Yeah, so some of it was opportunistic. There was, our search was really extensive and exhaustive. We did focus it just on Southern California. There are a few different reasons for that I could go into if it's of interest, but we focused on that geography. We were looking for businesses that had a really good reputation and specifically had a reputation for highly compliant organizations, which in hospice, it's a huge area for fraud, waste, and abuse. And Southern California is the epicenter for fraud, waste, and abuse in
Mm,
hospice, to the point where the DOJ has like a specific office targeted, that just works on hospice fraud in Southern California.
wow.
Um, so we found an organization that we were really excited about. And it turns out that the seller had two separate businesses, and they were almost sister companies in different geographies. There wasn't a whole lot of synergy between them, so they really operated as two independent companies. Um, and the seller was looking to actually sell them separately, or figured that that was going to be the path. And we kind of said, well, you know what? They're adjacent geographies, and we'll take them both. We think we can do this. And during that time, because hospice is so it's licensed at the state level by county. So in Southern California, there's effectively 6 counties that represent the major geography. And that seller had those two businesses were in 2 respective counties. And then we came across a really small program that was about a tenth the size of the other ones. And it was brand new. It had only been open for 2 or 3 years, and it had, a small handful of patients. But they had licensure for almost all the other counties in Southern California. And
Mm,
there was a moratorium going into effect that year that we were buying, and we knew this, and this was actually part of our strategy, is to try to get in before that moratorium went into effect, because once it went into effect, then the barrier to entry went up significantly. And we kind of said, you know what, let's take a gamble, and this one has licensure for multiple different counties, and it really gives us that future footprint that we can't sustain today, but in the future we're going to want. And the timing plus the funding plus the lenders, all of it, it kind of just made the most sense to go all in. And I aged a decade that week, but it worked out.
yeah, so this is a brilliant strategy, and I think probably one that will be increasingly important for searchers, which is understanding the regulatory environment. Now, obviously, healthcare is kind of like a leading edge of that, but regulation isn't going away. And if you can
Yeah.
get regulatory, I mean, I think this is essentially what Berkshire Hathaway has been doing, right? It's like buying into companies and industries that have high regulatory and capital barriers as sort of like
Right.
a defensible moat, right? And so that's awesome. I love hearing that. And then the funding was what was it, SBA funding or?
Yeah, so we the capital stack was effectively 2/3 debt, and then 1/3 was a friends and family raise, and the debt component was both seller financing as well as SBA.
Good. And so it like there's various things out there about, and it sounded like you didn't max out that component there, but
Correct. Yeah.
yeah, like I always say, when you buy a business and you put debt on it, you now have a different business than you had before, right? Because it has all this debt. So has that like taken years off your life, or has it been a manageable, like, was it a pretty steady business, or is it one of these things where you're like, I was just with some guys. We were helped some guys buy a place, and we were struggling for a while, and it was tough, man. We were sucking fumes. Now they're back. They've kind of turned it around, but my God, like they did, and there was no indication, right? They bought it from somebody who had no debt and kind of like very low variable costs. So like if there were dips in the business, that didn't really cause like a ton of concern and didn't show up red on the income statement. But then once they put the debt on, then it started showing up red, right? So how was it for you guys?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So the coverage ratios, we felt pretty comfortable going in, and
You
the
guys are
the
business students, so
business.
you talk about like coverage ratios.
Yeah, exactly. We just use the words, right?
Right,
It's
right,
all about
right, right.
using the words.
It
Yeah,
has an
but
MPV, but
totally. So
Mhm.
so the business had been those two programs had been operating for 20 years, and there's fluctuations in the market and fluctuations in the size of the business and the revenue, but like not more than 5-10% in a given year. And so it's relatively steady, and that gave us the confidence that the cash flow would be there to service that debt. I would say that you know one of the one of the things that's made it that's caused the discomfort has been our investment in back into the business, right? And so if it was just cash flow and debt service, that
Mm,
would be one thing. But since it's cash flow to both service debt and to invest back into the business in growth, in quality, in tighter compliance, in any kind of innovation in this space, that's where things get tight. And for better or for worse, we didn't take on institutional funding. We didn't raise any money from a VC to give us, a bunch of money to, pour into growth. And it was a choice we made. We we sort of knew what we were getting into, but that's where the discomfort comes from,
yeah.
more so than just fluctuations in a business.
Yeah, and you said you're looking at another acquisition right now. So is that so you have these licenses, right? So is there like, ground up development that you're considering, or is it mostly an acquisition strategy?
Yeah, so it's really a combination of both. Historically, the vast majority of businesses in the community-based healthcare space have a very tough time growing organically. Very tough.
Mm.
And so, like, 3% growth per year is doing great in this
Wow.
market, organically. So most of the growth, in private equity backed companies in this space is an acquisition strategy, um, and um, you know we're really setting out. And I'd be lying to say that if we haven't figured everything out, but we do have a hypothesis that we can do better than that average on an organic side through a variety of different mechanisms that I could talk about. But it's still early stage on that. But we are looking at a couple of different uh, acquisitions in kind of current and adjacent markets that are going to be complementary. Um, some of that is about adding on census and just getting bigger. A lot of it is really about what can we add to the platform that will be synergistic overall.
Other
And
services
so
and so,
other services that complement exactly.
yeah.
So in this case, palliative care is a classic one that's kind of just upstream of hospice.
Okay. And then is does your licensure help at all with acquisition, or does that kind of come with the acquisition?
Um, so generally speaking, the strategies are either the path is either you um, buy a business that has its own license or Medicare number and state license. And then you either maintain a series of these licenses, right? And you're operating effectively independent businesses under an OPCO, or you ditch the license, and you basically just bring all those patients onto a single license. There's pluses and minuses to both. But back to our earlier discussion about diversification, to date we've thought about it as maintaining the portfolio, and then at the OPCO level being able to provide those different services to make each of the individual programs as efficient and providing the highest quality that we can.
So I guess the other thing I was kind of getting at is like, that you bought a place that had licenses in multiple counties, is that like an acquisition advantage in any way, or is that only an organic growth advantage?
No, it's a good question. It's actually both, because you know what? I take that back. It's really mostly about organic growth. It sort of gives you an entry into that new into that county that you wouldn't otherwise be able to have without acquiring into it.
Right. Okay. And then, so you started talking about, hey, there are some ways. So a lot of people to grow potentially organically. So I got a couple of clients, and plenty of people are in these like very slow growing markets looking for
Yeah.
ways to figure out how to like take another bite out of the apple. So any advice there, or things you guys are thinking about would be helpful.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's advice until we've been successful at it, but I'll keep you posted.
Yeah.
But thoughts for sure. So, we've kind of said this a bunch of times, and that is that, if I need a hip replacement, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to find, Dr. Jones, who's the best hip replacement guy in my area, and I'm going to evaluate their reputation. I'm going to talk to a bunch of people, and I'm really being referred by my primary care doctor to Dr. Jones. My primary care doctor is not referring to orthopedics, right?
Right.
But in hospice, it's really, and this is true of all these kind of community-based businesses in healthcare, it's a commodity, right? It's considered a commodity business. And so most people will say, refer to hospice, right? That's kind of like how it goes. They don't necessarily say, refer to Dr. Kaplan's hospice or refer to Alleviate Care hospice, because they are the best. They are the gold standard. And so in our market, there's a short-term and a long-term strategy. And our long-term strategy really is to try to establish and to decommoditize the business so that we can differentiate. And so everybody always talks about, like, how are you different? And so in the current state of affairs for pretty much all hospices across the country, the way sales is done is good old-fashioned door-to-door. So you literally have, we call them liaisons, but they're salespeople, and they go to doctors' offices, they go to hospitals, and they go to facilities, nursing facilities and senior living facilities, and they talk about this is the hospice that I work for, and here's why we're great, and here are the services we provide, et cetera, et cetera. But since Medicare effectively dictates what that service is, there's really not a whole lot of differentiation. And so the relationship between the potential referral source and the business is actually that individual liaison. It's that individual salesperson, not with the company itself. And so, I think that kind of door-to-door sales strategy is super important, and it will never go away. It should never go away, because when all is said and done, it's a relationship business. But what we're really focusing on is, can we bring some of the sales sophistication that exists in other areas So think lead generation, think direct marketing, think SEO has really, it's kind of, there may be something there, but content-driven strategies to complement and provide air cover so that when those individual humans go in to talk to other humans, there's a context, there's a story. The referral source is not just hearing about Alleviate Care for the first time from, Alan, the liaison. They've been bombarded with really useful and well done content and direct marketing, etc. And now this person comes in and they say, "Oh, I've seen Alleviate Care online. Yeah, there was a great blog post that you guys put up, or that marketing campaign you guys did about stamping out hospice fraud in Southern California. That was really cool." And so it's really about creating a brand identity and creating a narrative that is authentic. All of this work is hard, and some of it's expensive. Some of it just requires, some good storytelling, and so we're trying out a bunch of these things, a bunch of strategies. We, as a side note and kind of an interesting story, one of my partners was on a plane 2 years ago and sitting next to some guy, and the guy said, "What do you do?" And he said, "Oh, I'm running a hospice company." And the guy started asking him all these questions like, "What do you use for CRM? And, how are you thinking about that?" And, at the time we were like, had just gotten started, and my partner was like, "Dude, I'm just trying to keep the lights on and, like trying to make sure that we're compliant from a regulatory standpoint. Like, we're not thinking about CRM." Well, it turns out that the guy was at the time the chief medical officer for Salesforce, and and he's a doc, and he was super interested, and they kind of built a relationship, and he introduced me. His name's Josh Newman, started out as an advisor and is now our chief strategy officer. And and really, like, the pillar of the strategy is, if you think about CRM as a tool or a set of tools to curate the journey from "I've never heard of your business" to "I'm an evangelist about your business" for, potential customers, can we apply the same principles to curating the journey from, "I've never heard of your business. My mom is sick and is dying, and I had such an amazing experience with my mom that now every other family member, every friend's family member, I'm going to say, oh my God, you've got to use Alleviate Care because it was a truly delightful human experience at a time that we needed human interaction and authenticity more than any other." And so we're really, it's early days, but we are baking in the CRM into the very fabric of the business, not just for sales purposes, but really for curating the patient journey, the family journey, all of our referral sources, and our employees as well.
Right. That sounds fascinating. So you are going to target the end consumer, not just the referral source as well through your campaign.
Yes. So our direct marketing is a combination of direct to consumer. Most of that is strictly educational in nature. It's what is hospice? It's when should you be thinking about hospice? It's, hey, you're reading in the LA Times about all this hospice fraud and people taking advantage of seniors. We're going to equip you with content and information so that you can protect yourself.
Right.
We're not going to say anything about like how great we are. We're not going to say
Right.
anything about like, we're just out there as a resource to educate the community. Likewise for doctors, right? Likewise, and so really like the way we're thinking about all of our direct marketing, it's about being the trusted source of education and the trusted source of information and knowledge. Use us if
And
you want. We think we're great, but
and the competitors aren't out there with that kind of messaging in
very, very
force.
little. And
Wow,
the
it's a big
ones that
opportunity.
are, it's big opportunity. The ones that are the 3 publicly traded companies, and they're known as the behemoths, right? They're known as like these monstrosities that some people want that, right? Like some people want to shop at Walmart because they know they'll be able to go in there and get whatever they need. Other people want a better experience. Other people want a higher
Right.
kind of feel. So
Yeah, and so I mean there is that contrast of like I guess there's probably returns to scale on your marketing too, though. The bigger you are in that area, the farther your dollar can go across a set of assets, right? So there is some amount like you got to get to a certain size where you even if you're not national, right? So you're not the
yep,
behemoth, but you got to capture your marketing dollar goes a lot farther, right? If you're the
totally.
marketing market,
There is some curve where like you're spending a ton for a small incremental benefit,
right?
and then you reach that threshold and that inflection point where your cost, I mean, some of it is cost per click and cost per ad, but it's like value generated per dollar spent on marketing starts to inflect, and the
Yeah.
value generated goes up and the marketing spend goes down. We're still on the uptrend, so I'll let you know when when we hit that inflection point.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I love the overall concept. It's like, look, regulated industry. You got
Yeah,
in, you have some optionality with these licenses. So you got grandfathered in because you were smart on the regs, right? And
yep.
and then you've got this kind of staid market where nobody's really branded, and like you got an open content kind of, I mean, there's stuff out there, but it doesn't sound like it's super focused on that market. And, you
And
have the
it's
ability
really,
to
really,
tailor.
yeah, and it's really, really unsophisticated. And I think that like one of the things that I love about these businesses where like, it's a general category of businesses, but it's like you can do really, really good work and you can deliver a lot of value to people. And if you are just a little bit savvy and you've got the right mission orientation and you're not going to go in there and like fleece people, you can really like come in and kind of blow up a market because it's been like stayed is a great word. It's been kind of
Right.
unchanged for 30, 40 years.
This is why
So
everybody loved home services for a long time, right? And
totally.
there's returns to mere competence and basic levels of integrity, right? So, it's just like, hey, you
Yeah.
answer the phone. Oh my God, you're so differentiated. And I think
I'll tell
those are
you,
great industries.
the one of the stories I love to tell was that our first order of business, like week 1, was, like beforehand, the nurses would drive like, 2 hours on a Friday afternoon every other week into the office through LA traffic to pick up their paper check and to turn in their paper time cards.
Wow.
Um, and we switched them to direct deposit. And there was all this like angst on the employees' behalf because they were like, "Where's my money?" And we're like, "No, it's in the bank, right? It's in the computer." And then the first time they got that direct deposit, right, and they had these like electronic time cards, really like it was like, man, these guys are good. And I was like, this is
These guys know what they're
like
doing. They have a payroll company, right? It's like, wow.
Totally. And so, so to me, that was like, man, there's just, and those opportunities come up over and over again. And some of it is on, like the business side, but some of it's also on the care delivery side, which is pretty awesome as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Alan, if anybody wants to reach out and learn more, or has a relative in the LA area facing that issue, how do they get in touch?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So, I would love people to come check out our website. It's alleviate.care. Likewise, send me an email at Alan, spelled correctly, .kaplan at alleviate.care. And would love to even just connect on LinkedIn and engage, because I think it's really important conversations that we don't have enough. And on the business side, on the healthcare side, would love to interface and engage.
Yeah, and if you're on the pod, not on YouTube, it's Alan, spelled correctly, as we both spell our names, and last name is Kaplan with a K. So,
You got it. You got it.
Alan, thanks for being on today. It was awesome.
Thanks for having me. This is great, and look forward to doing it again soon.
Yeah.
You've been listening to Owner RX with Alan Pentz. Want to apply what you just learned? Try our AI business advisor at ownerrx.com. It has all the insights and lessons from this podcast, plus hundreds of playbooks, ready to solve your specific business challenges. Owner RX. Stop being the bottleneck. Start being the owner.